It's viewer request time, this time on Making Wormholes. Hey, and welcome to this very special episode of Makin. This is an addendum to my earlier Doctor Who 2005 Vortex tutorial, where this time we'll be adding the title names and spinning logo. Big shout out to Cyber Whovian, who asked me 10 months ago for a tutorial on how to do this. I completely forgot until they very politely nudged me in June 22. This tutorial focuses on how to create 3D text inside After Effects, so we won't need any third-party elements. I could have used Element 3D or Cinema 4D Lite to make the text, but this method avoids that. Rather than get bogged down with understanding ray tracing and material settings, I'll then show how to fake reflections in the text. And if you have an older version of After Effects which doesn't include the C4D renderer, I'll show you how to use the Shatter effect to get a similar result. And remember to watch out for the secret password, which informs me about pacing and such things. So to recap the recap what we're going to do thing, look, go to the tutorial link in the description below, watch that, or download the project which will show you how to recreate the Russell T Davies era time vortex. And once you've done that, let's jump into After Effects. So here's our time vortex, and I'm going to make my life easier by rendering out an image sequence of the time vortex. I'm doing this for two reasons. It'll be less taxing on my PC as I'll need multiple copies, and I'll also be using the 3D cameras for the text and don't have to juggle two lots of 3D animations at once. So with the timeline selected, go to File, Export, and either add to Adobe Media Encoder or Render Queue. Normally I suggest Media Encoder as it allows you to keep working, and AME has lots of optimized formats. But in this case the render took a little while, during which I left the computer to do its thing. So Render Queue is fine too. In either case we want to render out a PNG image sequence for the forward motion. And we're back! Now, we need to render out the backwards motion. My camera is linked to a null object a little further up the tunnel, and I don't want to mess that up. So instead I'll go to Layer, New, Camera. And I'll make it a one node camera, meaning I don't get a point of interest. Once it's in the comp, use the parent controls to make it a child of the main camera. Hit enter and rename it to backwards, or, you know, something that sounds like a fully functional adult named it. Expand the transform properties and zero everything out. So now we have a backwards camera occupying the exact same space and orientation as our forwards camera. In the rotation properties, set Y to 180. There. Now we have a camera looking in the reverse view. And make sure the comp window is using this view and render this out as an image sequence too. Import both image sequences into After Effects and drag the forwards view onto the new comp button, which will create a new composition with matching resolution and duration of the image sequence. Okay, so now for the text. Go to the point in time where you want the first name to appear, and using the text tool, start typing. Clayton Hickman shared on Twitter this video, where they identified all the fonts used throughout Doctor Who. And according to Clayton, we need the Futura PT Book. Now, I don't know if you have this font installed. I do, but then it is available via Adobe Fonts, so I might have grabbed it from there. I did adjust the tracking in horizontal scale a bit to match the original too. Now to make the text 3D, click the 3D button, which might be hidden by the toggle switches and modes. Now I normally use the classic 3D renderer, but you'll see if I do the geometry options are greyed out. So switch the 3D renderer to Cinema 4D, and then you can expand geometry. Set the bevel style to angular. If you don't and then you use the opacity settings later, you'll see the mesh. But set the bevel depth to 0. Then set the extrusion depth to 60. If you have an older version of After Effects, you won't be able to follow this. Instead, go to Effect, Simulation, Shatter. Set the view to rendered, expand shape and set the pattern to custom. And the extrusion depth to about 4. In Force 1, zero out the strength and in physics, zero out the gravity. There you go. Back for the rest of you. In the text animate menu, choose front, color, RGB, and side, color, RGB. Set the front color to a light pink, and the side color to something darker, so we can make it out a little. Now for the fake reflections. Drag in the backwards image sequence and place it below the text layer, and toggling the switches and modes, set the backwards layer's track matte to alpha. This turns off the text layer and gives us a tiny bit of the backwards layer, but we've lost all that shading. At this point you'd think the answer would be to simply turn the text back on and set its transfer mode to... oh yeah, C4D Renderer doesn't work with transfer modes. But we can force it to. Right click on the text layer and choose Precompose, and select Move All Attributes. And now we can set the transfer mode to Screen. We're barely going to see the reflections, but it is there, and as we animate the text it will help sell the effect. The darker you make your text colours, the more you'll see the reflection. And that's the major part done! And the secret password is button, as in great big red button. Post this in the comments below and I'll be really grateful. And if you want to like my video too, then yay! I did have the Vortex available on Redbubble, so you could get it on a t-shirt or a phone case, but the BBC copyright flagged it. But there's loads of original artwork from my videos on there, so maybe see if anything else appeals. For the rest of the text animation, it's really just attention to detail. In this completed version of the comp, I've animated the text to move and rotate in 3D space to match the timings of the original. I brought in my image sequence so that I can match the vortex angles. And I keyframed a colour change in the front colour as I noticed the titles go white just before they zoom forward. Finally, I keyframed the extrusion depth matching what happens in the original. Back in the main comp, to make the reflections less sharp, with the layer selected I went to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, Fastbox Blur, and set the blur radius to 5. And C4D doesn't give me motion blur, so with the text precomp selected, go to Effect, Time, CC Force Motion Blur. This will slow down your render a little, but will give you that sense of speed. And before we're done, go back to Blur and Sharpen, and add a camera lens blur to the text layer. And keyframe this to go from 5 to 0 over the time it takes the text to reach the camera. It adds a fake depth of field. Faking it is so much easier than doing it for real. For the second name, the timings and movement are different, and I noticed the name was on a single line. So in the project panel, select your name precomp and go to Edit, Duplicate. And in this precomp, remove the line break and then go to Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point to Layer Content, and then replace all the keyframes you set with new ones. Back in the main comp, be sure not to drag the backwards layer in time, otherwise it will be out of sync. For the shield logo, I found this one on throop.org.uk. In the first season it was a 3D object, but in later seasons it was swapped out for a static image. That's what I've chosen to use. When you import this into After Effects and add it to your comp, you'll see it does have geometry options, just not the ones we want. No problem, that lets me show off another feature of AE. With the layer selected, go to Layer, Auto Trace. The default setting should create a mask on a new layer, with the mask tracing the alpha channel of the image. We still can't extrude this, but what we can now do, making sure no layer is selected, is go to the pen tool and start drawing a shape. Doesn't matter what you draw. Once done, expand it on the timeline until we can see the path. Then go to our newly created auto trace layer, expand the masks area until we can see the masks path. Hold Ctrl and C to copy it, and then on the shapes path, Ctrl and V to paste it. Delete the auto trace layer and delete the stroke one from the shape layer. Make this a 3D object. In geometry, set the start to angular, the bevel depth to 0 and the extrusion depth to 60. And then make the layer a child of the logo layer. In the transform setting, zero everything out. but you may need to adjust the position and scale so that the shape layer occupies the exact same space as the logo. Then set the Z depth value of the position to 5, so that it appears behind the logo. We've now got a logo with an apparent depth. To add a little reflection, I also duplicated the shape layer so that I could have it serve as a track mat for a third backwards sequence. And for the first shape layer, I chose a dark brown fill color and dropped the opacity to 33%. Final touches were to add force motion blur to both the logo and shape objects. And that's it! Loads of different obscure techniques, but the most useful one for me is how to force transfer modes when using the C4D renderer. And what do you think of faking it versus the real thing? Let me know in the comments, and if you have any requests, feel free to ask. No promises, but if I think it's a good idea, I'll try not to make you wait as long as Cyberhoovian had to.